Hello, people. This week is this week I read The Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. I'm going to be honest, I also kind of read the second to last book of The Expanse, but I'm trying to get the last book finished before I release that one, and then I don't want like seven in once. So I'm doing sort of an audio interjection video here. And then this is just such a perfect book to do it on because it's kind of short. That's why we're doing audio only. Just to be 100% honest. And I'm doing it that way as opposed to just reading both of the other Expanse books so that I can have, sort of more honest reactions versus a reaction with foreknowledge. Just FYI. In any case, this is why it's an audio only this week. Also, my power just went out, so I don't have any lights in my room. It's all happening. So, Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. This is a well-known classic novel. There's been numerous movies made of it, and my first time actually reading the book. And I will put this in the same category as Moby Dick, as Dracula, Heart of Darkness, I guess. These are books that are found. I remember seeing them when I was like in the third or fourth grade or fifth grade in the school library. Yes, they're in every library. But I'm like, there's no way little me would have understood or got the greatest enjoyment out of this. I really feel like you should read these when you're older. I'm not even thinking high school, I'm thinking college. They're just, it's really that good. It's not long, but it's real meaty verbiage. Yes. I'm going to say there are parts that almost feel like we're blending the narration almost into poetry at points. It's just very, very good verbiage. And that's what carries it more than the horror elements. I guess you could say horror, you could say this is science fiction, but those elements are tangential to the verbiage. What is it? Um, I was coming home from some place at the end of the world about 3 o'clock of a black winter morning, and my way lay through a part of town where there was literally nothing to be seen but lamps. Street after street, and all the folks asleep. Street after street, all lighted up, as if for a procession, and all as empty as a church. It's it's just such neat verbiage there, poetic. This is the whole book. We're getting what do I want to say? This great mood, this great vibe comes out of this book. I see why people keep bringing it up year after decade after decade, I should say. Our story starts with a Mr. Utterfield and his friend. I think it's a Dr. Layton. A Dr. Lanyon. I think that's his other friend. And they're just chatting. And it's a great just sidestep into a story because we're talking about a mysterious door and a mysterious person who's in it, and that mysterious person being a Mr. Hyde. And he describes seeing, like, on this night where he's walking home, there's a girl, like a 5 or 7 or 8 year old girl, and this big guy comes around the corner, plows over her. just heartlessly tramples her, which sounds a little odd. Like I can imagine, bumping someone over, but the way they describe it, like he's trampling on her, and then the way the town, like the people around react, they react like the girl's almost nearly hurt. Which if you're grown and there's a child, you can physically hurt a child. This is how the town reacts. But more than just this action, it's the what is this? Not even the description, but the vibe that comes off of this Mr. Hyde is what's interesting. There was nothing wrong with his appearance, but he's displeasing, downright detestable. They say he's extraordinary looking, nothing out of the way, nothing wrong with him, but that you just don't like him, just almost instantly. And then I get where, through the rest of the story, we get varying now descriptions of him. Because that first description is from our good doctor, what's his name? Our good Dr. Lanyon. Other descriptors of him start to give me like he's small, he's hunched, that he, I want to say goblin-esque, like, this kind of vibes coming across. And I think it's because some of these become eyewitness testimony. I think there's something we're into about perceptions here, right? Wherein multiple eyewitnesses can see the same event, and yet none of it is, let's say, reality. Well, I think I saw something on YouTube the other day about this, where your eye sees like a pinpoint image. So when you focus on a thing, you're seeing like, let's say one pixel of it. And that's why your eye will move constantly. It's grabbing more pixels around this little moment. But then the rest of it, the peripheral, the sides of your eyes, pick up all this other data, and then the brain being the brain, and your processing power being what it is, the rest of it just fills in. That your brain is making up a lot of that, because what the eyes actually see is a very small dot of color at a time. Like in the moment, you're seeing one thing, and the rest is just your brain processing power, right? Like that's actual science. You could look that up. So then how do we get to what we're seeing from what we're seeing? That processor. And that's where we get these odd eyewitness testimonies. Because later a girl will say that she saw a nice old guy that she liked, and then this hideous thing. Our Dr. Lanyon will have Hyde in his house, and it's just a complete stranger to him. We have some descriptions later on, towards the very end of the book, of Jekyll himself describing when he looks in a mirror, and that this thing is just not him at all. And I feel like I've also seen this idea. Again, I say the idea because that's the stronger vibe to me than, let's say, a movie would present it as he's a different person that's just different. It's the same body, but what emanates out of it is so different that it doesn't remind you of the other guy at all. And I feel like I've remembered this also from, you'll hear people's testimonials when they were on drugs or something, which is a vibe that also comes up in this book, where they're like, I don't recognize that person. I'll see a photo of me being this drug person, this drug addict. I'll see a photo of me years ago while I was on the drugs, and it looks like a different human, right? That's the vibe I get when I'm reading these bits of this book. That's the vibe you get from this Hyde. It's very, very cool. Our Mr. Utterson is a lawyer. It's another thing that's really cool, just as a side note, because I feel like now in our modern world, We have interactions with professionals on a professional level. I hire a lawyer, he does lawyer stuff for me, we move away. I hire a doctor, he does doctoring, and then we move away. Whereas in this book, which is older, you have he's a lawyer, but that he has a personal stake in this client of his. That apart from being a lawyer, I have an issue with this will that affects me personally. That personal vibe he has is what leads him into the rest of his investigation into this Mr. Hyde. It's above and beyond just work. There's a social aspect to it. And it's a cool little window into that time of humanity when that would have been the case. We might even see that as intrusive now. If your lawyer's looking into your life, like don't look in my life, don't bother about my business. I need you to make sure this will is done appropriately. But back in those days, that would have been normal. Or maybe not normal, but aspirational. And I think that's very cool to think about. I think this is 1800s, I'm not sure, but it's cool to think about an old time when I guess society worked differently than it does now. The small amount of information that the lawyer carried back with him to the great, dark bed on which he tossed to and fro until the small hours of the morning began to grow large. Just another example of just the great mood that this book builds. At some point, we get a murder. Of course, Hyde's going to murder somebody. It's seen by a girl from afar. It's Hyde and another guy talking. And Hyde just sort of snaps and just starts beating this guy with his cane. And with ape-like fury, he trampled his victim underfoot. Like, you just literally stomping on the guy till he's dead. Turns out the dude's an MP, which is, I think, like a political office for Britain land. It'd be like if you kill a state representative, maybe. It's more than just a normal murder. You killed somebody with some standing here, and it sets the rest of our sort of narration on. The investigation is the investigation. It's not overly involved. We all know who did it. We as readers know who did it. That's not the issue. The issue comes to be in the book, it's the mystery of this Hyde person. We know it's that they're both in the same. So the very end, we bust in and he finds Hyde on the floor. He says dead. He says the cords on his face still moved with the semblance of life, but that life was quite gone. And he also says that it's apparent to him that it was suicide, that Hyde done himself in. But as a reader, I know it's both one and the same guy. They're both Jekyll and Hyde as one human. I suppose if this was your first reading, you don't know this. Begin, the mystery's slight. The revelation comes in letters he picked up in this Mr. Hyde's office. 2 letters. One from a Dr. Lanyon, who has recently died from some kind of issue, and the other's from a Dr. Jekyll. He reads Mr. Lanyon's letter first, and it describes sort of a convoluted situation with Jekyll needing help. He's like, okay, a mysterious person's going to come to your house. You got to give them these salts and not ask any questions. And my life's on the line, and you'll have done me this great service if you do this. Your boy Lanyon does a good, upstanding job of this. He has a gun in case there's some ne'er-do-well that does something odd. this mysterious person ends up being your Hyde, but it's in the moment he's writing this letter down. He says, in the moment, it's a person I don't know. He drinks this concoction and becomes Jekyll, a very tired, drained looking Jekyll. A Jekyll is a person he does know. But the way he describes it is there's such a shock to his system seeing this change from this thing, this person that seems bad, into this human being that he knows to be good. That shock is so much, the terror of it, that he won't describe anything more about what happened, that he hardly believes it as he's writing the letter, but that even in writing the letter, he's re-remembered of it, and a terror comes on him that he can't shake. And he's like, this terror is going to kill me. The shock of this terror constantly remembered. And he does actually die in real life. He's dead at the time our Mr. Utterfield's reading this letter. And it culminates in Dr. Jekyll's letter. And here's where the vibe has its purpose, I believe, in the reading of this final letter from Jekyll. Us, the readers, knowing that this Hyde is dead on the ground. Dr. Jekyll's giving you the backstory, and it's some his life. He's well-to-do. He's respected. He has money. He has good looks. But inside is where, I guess, his conflict is. Like so many people. I would say it's the two ends of himself ruined each other. So he wants to be a good guy. He wants to do upstanding things. But in that, let's say I'm studying, I'm doing good, I'm hanging out with people. I'm not that too talkative, but no one seems to mind that. In those moments in his mind, all of that is ruined by the thoughts of his proclivities, what does he say? His shames, he calls them. Now, he doesn't really ever really say too much what these are. But to a guy like that, let's say, me wanting to be violent, maybe enjoying seeing violence, um, it could just be sort of like sleaze type things. It could not even be that he does them, but just that he wants to. He says just maybe the want to be dirty in that sense. Those thoughts alone are ruining the good moments that he has. And then, of course, if he partakes in them in any way, that's what he says. He doesn't ever say what he's done, but just small partaking of it feels good, and that good feels then bad to the rest of his, I guess, essence. That's his situation. Then he applies science to this, because in his mind he said, I'm two people, actually. And with, what does he say? With science and various salts. That's as far as we get with the science fiction. The various salts, he somehow removed the two so that the bad is its own thing and the good becomes its own thing, or the wholesome. Just the bad part of him that wants to do these things, whatever that is now off to the side. And again, this almost poetic language is what sells to you now the final moments of this book, that he's done something that's never been done on earth. For as bad as anyone's ever been, they're still human. They're still good and bad. But that he, with his science, has made an entity that's 100% evil. What does he say? At the first breath of this new life, to be more wicked, tenfold more wicked, sold a slave to my original evil. And the thought in that moment braced and delighted me like wine. So he's bad 100% in a way no other human can be, because science has made it so that there's this split inside of them. And then we get this kind of a vibe of creation that with science and man, he's created a thing that's what is it? He's not qualified to create. God is. It doesn't say God, but it again, it's the vibe you get. What does he say? My original evil. It reminds me of what is it in the Bible? Original sin. It doesn't harp religiously at you, but it's such elevated verbiage that it leans itself that way. So that this concept then is approached to us of, as bad as people are, they're not pure evil. And what would we do with pure evil? And then you remember every description he has of every incident anyone's had with Hyde. And they all say the same thing, that for no reason, you instantly don't like him. So much so that it's like it chills your blood looking at him. And it's because as humans, we're seeing a thing that is unnatural, that is down to its core a pure evil, distilled out of this person, like, in a way that can't be done any other way in any other person. And it's abhorrent to people. We don't like them. It's also now, in this letter, he says, it starts to eat at the other one. At first, it's, let's say, young. It's newly made. It doesn't know what to do. Uncoordinated, kind of. But as it gets a grip on life itself, it starts to do more bad things. And then he gets to watch those things, like in his mind. And part of him enjoys it, to see. It's like being able to do things and not get in trouble because in his mind that's not him. And it isn't him. Or is it him? This is the question we start to have. These are the broader questions that linger afterwards. Like, it wasn't me, it was a blackout rage. I'm like, was it not you? Was it you? It was you. It was your body. You're responsible for that. It also then, again, because he's unqualified, because he's just a human and not God, it starts to take a life of its own out of his control. At first it was just the drug, but then it starts to be he's Hyde when he didn't take the drug. It's starting to come up out of him. And as it comes up, the other one gets weaker. The good Jekyll side is starting to get weaker and weaker. And then we get this great moment where, like any kind of a drug addict, he needs more and more of the drug. Instead of now, the drug is making the good come back. The drug's the only thing that keeps the good there. And I feel like I've heard that from testimonials too, where people are like, I only felt myself when I'm on the heroin or whatever the other drug is. That this other reality is just untenable. Only to him, the other reality is this evil. It's great parallels to a lot of things. It really, really is. He says this is where the murder happens. He had been fighting this sort of addiction off. But at some point, he wanted to dip his toe back in it. I guess then the commentary is that we're not beings of pure good and we're not beings of pure evil. That part of humanity, part of being a human is the struggle between the two. The struggle to say, no, I'm going to avoid the bad. I'm going to enjoy the good. And that avoidance and fighting that want makes the good things we do better, more. This energy, every human moves through the world and grows and overcomes things. And that's I think that's part of the unsaid lesson of the book. I not say lesson. I say commentary, this thought provocation that it has, because he dips his toe back in, and he describes it like an alcoholic who hadn't had a drink in a long time, where it goes from the last time I drank, I just needed a sip, but it's been 4 years, so that sip turns into a mega bender. The same with this evil. The mega bender is the murder. It's just why it pops off so much harder than normal. Then he gets to the situation with needing Lanyon's help because he's Hyde. He can't control when Hyde comes out, and Hyde's the most wanted man in London right now. And so he needs more of these salts. So he gets more of the salts, and lo and behold, they're not the same. That the first batch was tainted somehow, and the taint is the missing ingredient that makes the transition work. So that he's now in a limited supply and it's running out. And sort of the letter ends on the fact that he knows at some point Hyde's going to take over. And the final decision will be on Hyde as to whether to take a final solution to kill himself or, get caught and get hung up by the gallows. And that I guess the pride in Hyde would rather die than be hung. And then we remember the state he's in. But to me, it's one of those moments where, in the movie where the person's supposed to be dead, but he's still twitching. I wonder, and I do, because the book just sort of ends like that. Like, well, I'm done with this letter. We'll see what Hyde does. And then we know that Hyde's dead on the ground. But it really makes me wonder, like, did he kill it? Because the transition's so strong, and there's still the description of things twitching. Is Hyde dead, and then Jekyll can come back? Did he kill off this thing that was becoming its own thing? Did he kill off his unholy creation, and he can be resaved as himself, or did the body die and it's all gone? I'm really not entirely sure. That weird twitchy part is weird to me, but it wouldn't be weird if we didn't have also the variations and descriptions, because we do have three or four different descriptions of Hyde that vary from he's just big and I don't like him to he's like a goblin type of character. So I kind of wonder at it. I could work in my brain where he's just dead. I could also work where he isn't dead, where he's cured himself somehow with this deadly dose. I mean, it is chemicals inside, right? I wonder at it. It's a very fun sort of open-ended story. Also, because of the narration. So at first it's sort of a story being told, but the end parts, and some of the crucial parts, are eyewitness. The girl's testimony in seeing the murder, Dr. Lanyon's letter, and Dr. Jekyll's letter. Those are both personal, or all three personal points of view that aren't necessarily an omnipotent narrator who would be able to tell us for certain. So it's odd that our omnipotent narrator's final, word on the subject is this twitching body that Lanyon thinks is dead. And the final word of the book is from Dr. Jekyll, but a letter, which could be passed, anyone can read a letter at any time. And again, with this elevated feeling it gives us, it drifts us off with that. Very cool. So to me, the mystery of whether he's dead or not hits harder after I'm done with the book than the mystery whodunit did. It hits harder than the whodunit mystery ever did during my actual reading. It's a very fun and interesting book. I highly recommend it. Also, because it's a classic, You could probably get this bad boy for free. And that is a fantastic price for a book. Okay, that's our audio only book. I will now run my ads. These are my books. You can buy them and help the channel. You can subscribe and help the channel. Comments probably help the channel. And I guess if you just want to watch, that's not a problem either. Right? It's YouTube. It's any way you want to roll, though. Okay, people. I will talk to you, lovely lot, next week.